I would be excited if an AI was like, I'm going to do your dishes. I'd be very excited. But I almost feel like it's just creating more work because you're going faster, you're being better, you're being more competitive. Welcome to the Differential Podcast. Today we're going to talk about the future of coding. Should young people still learn to code? What should developers now well into their technology careers focus on to stay relevant? What's overhyped? What are the real concerns? We're going to talk about all of that today. My name is Shahbano. I'm a product designer at Differential, and I'll pass it over to you, Tyler, to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Tyler. I'm also a product designer here at Differential. And Marcelo.
I'm Marcelo, and I'm the head of infrastructure and cybersecurity here at Differential. I also do some product lead work for one of our products, and yeah, that's basically what I do.
Nice.
Great.
So Marcelo has a reputation at the company for being like the genius coder who wants to learn something over the weekend and by Monday is the expert. That would be my bio of Marcelo. Okay, so let me kick us off with a question. This is specifically for you, Marcelo. How do you use AI copilots now? Like, how have AI copilots changed your workflow?
When that technology started kind of like getting a lot of attention, I definitely jumped on it immediately. I was like, hey, let's see what this is about, right? I tried a bunch of different solutions that were available then, but essentially it was ChatGPT and Copilot in different IDEs. And I liked them initially, but they started becoming more of a nuisance the more I used them. And I feel like for me, the problem was mainly that it's embedded into your IDE. And that can be a little bit like you're trying to do something, you already know what you want to do. You don't need any help, right? And so you've got this like massive amount of help that's just kind of like getting in the way, right? So what I learned early on is that I don't like having it integrated into my development environment.
Whoa.
But
That's a perspective I have not heard before. That's interesting.
yeah,
Interesting. Is it more like an annoying intern that you're having to like check all the time?
yes, it kind of can be because some
Yeah.
of the solutions that it'll give you won't necessarily be on the spot. It depends on what you're doing, right? But like, um, if you're doing something that's more, at the edge that if the large language model probably doesn't know about, then it's just going to be guessing and they're going to be terrible guesses.
What if you're like you're making like a class from scratch? Is it that the copilot is going to write your CRUD function and you love it for that? Or is it you don't even need that? Like, get out of my way. I have a way that I like to do these things. It's actually prohibitive, even for those tiny things.
So here's the thing. I do think that there's a space for them, right? And I think that the best way that I have found use of AI in my development environment is by having it separate so that it's not getting in the way of my like being able to just autofill with normal autofills, no smart things going on, right? But whenever I need to kind of like get a little bit more creative about a solution, or if I know that this is like a particular algorithm that already exists out there that an AI model can probably resolve really quickly that I just don't want to think about, that's something that I can offload, right? I think that's really, really useful because it's a massive cognitive offload. It's like, okay, yeah, there's this algorithm that I need to write. Okay, write it and make it in JavaScript. It'll probably get me something that's very, very close, if not perfect. And then I can just copy that over to my environment and leverage it how I need.
So it's you don't want it up in your business, but when you need it, it's nice to have it available. So okay, so that's like your day-to-day workflow. What about learning new technologies, learning new languages or new frameworks?
So I think that for anyone that is trying to learn how to program, using AI to learn is very, very useful. Like you're going to level up much, much faster because you can ask very specific questions and it's like 95% accurate, right? Or 96 or whatever number, but the answers will be very good if it's not something that's at the edge, right? So like just learning how to use JavaScript or Node or like one of these very common tools that has been around for many years. It's an excellent tool for learning for sure. Recently, I have found it's been also a good way to break kind of like the barrier to entry into infrastructure as code type of things, because now there's a little bit more information out there. So specifically with like Pulumi and Terraform and a couple of these other languages, if you're just getting started with infrastructure, you don't really know how things work, you can make kind of these more broad questions about like, you know, how does networking work? How does EC2 work? And then be like, okay, well now turn this into code, and then it'll actually turn it into something that you can use. So it's just really good for getting started.
I agree with that. I had the Python installation on my computer broken for like years. I didn't want to put the effort into Googling and reading all the Stack Overflow to fix it, so I just ignored it until ChatGPT immediately fixed. And it was like, do this, do this, do this. I didn't even put any effort into trying to understand what it was telling me to do. I just did it. And now I have Python running, so I totally feel that. Let's move on to a slightly different topic. So Sam Altman, like recently, maybe a couple months ago, gave a talk at Stanford. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, or maybe he's not CEO anymore, but on the founder, he's on the board. So he had talked about how there will be dramatically more capable AI systems every year, dramatically more capable models. Like he was saying, GPT is the dumbest model you'll ever have to use from this point on, which of course that makes sense. Technology progresses. But what he's talking about is like fewer hallucinations, better access to data. So my question for you is, how do you see the developer job changing in the next 5 years and in the next 10 years because of these models and copilots?
Yeah, so I don't think that, you know, developers are going to be losing their jobs or anything over something like AI. I do believe that, at least in its current state, it's still going to be a tool that enhances developers, right? It's not something that replaces them. And the main reason I believe that is because the creative part of engineering isn't really there with AI. And there's certain things that it's just incapable of doing today. Even if you give it access to like your full file system and all of the intellect of the world and all of this stuff, like there's like certain like things that it's unable to connect that the human mind can connect like immediately, right? And so, yeah, I feel like that it's that creative part, right? Like I feel like AI is still kind of like a master bullshitter, I guess. I mean, right? So even though in a big part, you know, our job is very creative in certain regards, and you know, you need a little bit of that to be creative. I don't think that the machine is actually being creative, right? It's just kind of like meshing things together and guessing what the next right thing is. I think the next big step in AI is really going to be once these algorithms actually start developing that sort of like internalized trend where they're actually like thinking about things like all the time. And I feel like you'd have to have some sort of like I don't know, maybe like more chaos, right? In even the machine, right? Like I kind of feel like you want to put those models in like quantum technology to have like full chaos and then really be able to replicate a human mind and just have it thinking all the time like we do, right? Because AI is just waiting for a prompt. It's waiting for you to say, hey, like, how do I do this, right? But it doesn't keep going. It doesn't say, okay, well, I did this, then I figured this out, but then I did this, but then I did this, and so I ended up at this conclusion. Like, it doesn't go through all those same steps that the human mind goes through, and I feel like that's probably the biggest limitation right now.
Like right now, it's a tool maybe very helpful for a junior developer just getting started, but there still has to be senior and beyond that double check all of the work of the junior dev and the AI. So the job loss thing would be so far down the road because theoretically that job loss would not be for the junior person learning. It would be the final step of there is no more QA. The AI can just tell you yay or nay, basically, on like if the code is good, right? Like it's that.
Ooh, okay. So
job,
I have an opinion.
Mhm.
So about it saying yay or nay, that's actually one of the things it's worst at. So like remember the whole thing with Devin? Apparently like the cases that it was good at was like just creating things from scratch. It was throwing things out there. It was giving you a start that sort of half worked. But it can't go into a piece of code and be context aware and fix it like a human. It's so far from that. Like that was just something it could not do. And so what you're saying about code maintenance, which is I think the most annoying things for developers, that AI can't touch. So the most annoying problem it refuses to solve, but that initial ideation, come up with a thing, maybe it can help there. And to me, that's more of a design, creative kind of input, like the value of that versus the development input. I don't know if you guys agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's definitely like somebody has to be commanding that AI, right? Like you can't just have that AI living and saying, okay, like even if you say like, okay, every hour, check the code base and fix something, like it's not even going to know where to start, right? Like there's so much direction that you have to give it for it to actually do a good job. And it's kind of like the same as just any other developer, right? You have to give your developers a lot of instruction for them to understand exactly what to deliver. But with AI, you have to be even more like specific and much more like you have to be super, super like on top of it, right? So
Right, you
yeah,
don't want
like
your model to spin up like 10,000 EC2 instances for you. That would
yeah,
be a
no, that'll
problem.
get expensive, yeah.
I feel like so this is very similar to prompt engineering, but in the sense of just being a regular user of ChatGPT, where if you ask it to write a blog entry, write me a blog about puppies, it's going to write the most generic thing. But if you ask it, you give it a role, you go through like the model of prompting and you say, you're
Hmm.
a veterinarian with 20 years of experience, write me a blog entry about this, break it out into these bullet points, then do this. And actually, Tyler is very good at this, where he tells the AI exactly how he wants it to do, like the model, how he wants it to provide the answer. And you would do
Hmm.
that with a human, but I think people just assume, like with ChatGPT, oh, I'm just going to give it a general thing. It should get better at responding to me. So it
Yeah,
seems
no.
like there's a good analog with the code where it's just another way of coding. We're just doing it in natural language.
Yeah, it's definitely like reversed, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the thought is like, you know, normally you're like building your functions and going through steps and then you get to your solution. But with AI, I feel like maybe in the future we're gonna get to a point where fine, maybe you're not putting your hands to the keyboard and you're not like typing things out. Maybe the future with AI is gonna be something more like, okay, hey, like build me a function that does this, and then it shows you. And then you say, okay, like fix this, and then it will fix it, and then you're on to the next thing. Okay, let's do this. But it's all going to be more like you said, natural and fluid, right? But ultimately, the decision maker is not the machine; it's you, the human.
Yeah, I got questions like along this line, especially as the non-computer science person here. But it's like a few questions, I guess. And one is, you have there's a theoretical problem that you're trying to solve, and you're going to go to Google, and as a coder, you're going to go to like GitHub or whatever, and you're going to find a solution to the problem, right? But it's never the solution because your problem has context that is much more complicated than just do this and it'll give you that result.
Mhm.
And what I'm asking is, Shahbano mentioned EC2 instances being spun up, right? The AI, let's say there's some problem and the solution is, yeah, here's 1,000x compute power is the solution in the AI's mind, right? But in your mind, obviously that's not the correct solution because that would cost $1 billion. And
Mhm.
I'm curious on like, how does the AI overcome that specific problem? Because that seems like a way better solution to a problem rather than just being like a resource for a junior developer. Like, how does it gain context to know not just to spit out some random answer to a question, but like the correct answer?
I feel like that's where you have to get like recursive with it, right? And you have to kind
Mm-hmm.
of know, like you have to say something like, because your prompt would be something around the lines of, hey, like I need to spin up a web server for some service, right? So maybe you're using Next.js, fine. And And then you just start with that and you say, set up my infrastructure as code, tell me what I need to do. And so the suggestion is probably going to be something, yeah, spin up an EC2 instance, blah, blah, blah. And then you're going to say something like, well, that the way that you've built that app it's a static app. So you don't actually have to run it. So then you would prompt the machine again and you say, hey, do the same, but consider that it is a static app, right? So you can still be ambiguous. You're not specifically telling it the solution. You're being more ambiguous, knowing that it already hit the wrong answer. And then it'll say, okay, well, here you go. You can actually do it with an S3 bucket, and you put CloudFront, and then it's going to be really, really cheap, right? Well, it's going to be cheap, right? But I feel like you could also maybe even twist it a little bit, right? Like maybe even at the beginning, you could be like, hey, I'm building this app, I'm deploying it, give me a very cheap solution. And maybe its response will be something like, it doesn't know that it's a static app. Maybe it'll ask you whether it's a static app. And maybe it's going to give you a new suggestion on your EC2 instances. Maybe it'll be like, hey, use a reserved instance. Like that's going to reduce your cost like 70%. Why not? Right? Things like that. So ultimately, I think it's all about how you ask the question.
So kind of piggyback on the context part, like talking about how the models are trained in the first place, right? And I'm assuming it's a lot of open source, like code, that how the models are trained. Like, do you think people are still going to work on open source code since it's used for training data for models that are then going to be commercialized by like some single individual that'll build some app by themselves or whatever? Like, does the open source world get destroyed by training AI models?
So I don't think so. I feel like, open source it's open for a reason, right? Like it's meant to kind of be a little bit educational, and it's also meant to be something that, you can obviously leverage inside of your own projects. And I feel like, I do understand that there's a bit of an ethical, like moral line in there. But it's not actually very different from what humans would do, right? Like I feel like, you're trying to find this solution to like some particular problem, and maybe you need a library that is open source, and why can you use it and not AI, right? I feel like it's kind of unfair to not let a machine use it if you can use it, right?
And that's so interesting.
So
that's so interesting.
I know it's a little backwards, but it is kind of the same thing. Like you as a person are doing the same thing that the machine is doing. It just happens to be able to replicate it maybe a little bit faster and more efficiently than you can.
So that wouldn't deter you from contributing to open source code, the fact that models are trained on it?
Okay. No, not at all. No, because I know that ultimately the machine is not going to replace me. Like I know that it needs guidance. So if I can make the machine better, all that power is going to come back to me, and then I'm just going to be able to use it and make my life easier. So why not, right? I feel like open source is meant to be this sort of like cycle of just continuous communal improvement.
Is there a world where the AI is contributing to the open source world and not just taking from it?
I think so, but again, I feel like it's only going to be through developers, right? Like a developer making a particular function that is missing. So
Speaking of AI replacing jobs, so I want to switch gears a little bit into jobs. Which, like last year there was the big hype, oh, are we all going to lose our jobs? Now we know, not really. Your jobs are going to change. You're going to have to adapt. But I want to talk a little bit about how jobs have changed and then what that means for the future. So I feel like I don't see sysadmin roles listed in job postings anymore. Those people are now cloud architects or cloud engineers or DevOps or something like that. So that role has kind of shifted. And I'm sure those people like retrained or upskilled or went to a different field. I want to get your take on what roles for developers are going to shift the most because of AI. And I know that's kind of a hard question to make a prediction on, But I'm wondering what's like a easy use case for a large language model or some other generative AI, which you could see that being eaten, that one role kind of being eaten. And we know in tech, we work in tech, we always have to learn, we always have to adapt. No one job is the same. All of us are kind of generalists with skills at the end of the day. But yeah, I want to get your take on what those skills are that are going to be eaten.
Yeah, I feel like maybe if I had to be very specific, the things that AI I feel very much excels at, and it does kind of push things away, are kind of like I guess testing, QA, and documentation, right? So it's very good at fixing those problems in maybe novel ways that we're still kind of like figuring out how to deal with, right? But like, for example, like I think in bigger teams you might have sub teams or some people that are specifically focused on making sure that all your documentation is being written and placed in the right place, and everything is tested, full coverage, like all these things that make your entire code base have more quality, right? But now I think with the advent of AI, we're reaching this sort of spot where it's like you can just say, hey, analyze my code, tell me where I'm missing the documentation, and fill it up for me. And so it'll probably get like 90% of the job done, and then you just have to go through it and be like, okay, let me fix it, right? So if anybody is focused in that, I mean, I would strongly suggest finding innovative ways to become superhuman there, because you can, right? You can totally be like replace 3 people with just one person using AI, for example.
I'm wondering why did you decide to become a developer? And people have a lot of reasons, like I want a job that makes good money, or I like getting in the code and focusing on the meticulous details. What was it for you?
So for me, I just fell in love with doing it. I did not study computer science. I am an industrial engineer. When I came to the US, I started my own shop, and I wanted to automate everything about it. I mean, being an engineer, you want to not have to deal with, silly problems. So I turned to coding, and I very quickly was able to level up. And I'm very thankful to the JavaScript community in general and open source. That's definitely where I learned how to program, like people just helping me out in forums and things like that. From there, like the more I rebuilt the system that I was making for my little company, the more I fell in love with it, the more I wanted to improve and just get better and better and better. And it's just sort of this never-ending cycle of just my curiosity getting the best of me, I guess. I'm lucky enough that I was able to make a job out of it.
Do you think that, like, my hunch, just based on, I guess, what I see in media, is like usually people have the wrong relationship to AI, meaning like they don't understand it, or they like hate it, or they like talk down about, or whatever, any kind of thing like this. Okay. And your description just now of you leveling up through a community is a human relationship, human to human, because everybody wants to help each other learn. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if there is a detriment in the conceptual relationship we have to AI, and it's not leveling up as quick as it could because we treat it like subhuman or something, and it needs to be able to go out and explore the world just as much as a human would whenever they're first starting to learn. Is that a thing that we can give to AI and the AI community somehow?
I mean, I do believe that people are quick to jump to conclusions.
Yeah.
And that's really sad, because that's not what development is about. Development is about that curiosity, right? Wanting to learn and feed yourself, whether it's the latest and greatest or whatever it may be, right? And I think that when it comes to AI, it's, it just kind of goes both ways, right? Like you learning from it, and then you teaching it, right? And learning how to use it. I think that's what people need to understand, just getting in there early on. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I'm thinking now, like after going through, my sort of journey to level up and become a developer, I feel like had I had a tool like ChatGPT, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that would have greatly improved
Yeah.
my odds and my learning, right? I mean, yeah, because like there were questions that I would wait. You're sitting in a forum, you're kind of like you put your question out,
Yeah.
and then you wait like a week
Yeah.
for somebody to throw you a bone, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
so, so
And
yeah,
sometimes
and
it's
and
so
all
obscure
that
you might
time, right?
never.
Yeah, no, yeah. Which is like that. Though I think the one thing that maybe AI will make a little bit more detrimental is that maybe it helps a little bit too much. Because one thing that I did get from that waiting is that you're just banging your head against the wall. You're just like, I
It's
gotta figure
true.
this out. I have to figure this out. So it pushes you really, really hard, and it made me personally just take deep, deep dives into massive code bases of other frameworks to try to learn from other developers what they're doing, right? So like diving into React or React Native and seeing how they brought things together and why they're splitting things, and like just reading through the code, right? Um, that's a different kind of experience when you're learning that I don't think something like AI can give you, right?
It's like the resilience from learning how to solve problems, and that's a core skill that you need.
Yes. So, but I do think that you eventually get there, regardless, right? AI can only solve so much. So,
Mm-hmm.
I think you're going to be less frustrated overall as you're learning because you're getting the solutions a little bit easier. And then once it's time to, when the fight's getting good, right? Like, then you're gonna have to, move AI out of the way because it can't solve the problem you need to solve, and you have to take your deep dive, right?
I will say, from the perspective of someone who hasn't coded in years and is now getting back into learning because of AI, one thing that's curious to me is like if you did like a tutorial like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, a person would be walking you through something, and they would pick and choose what part of this complicated set of ideas that you're learning that they're presenting to you first, and they're telling you, hey, don't worry about this other thing over here, we're going to teach you this concept, then we're going to like illuminate more and more and more, and you get to the end of it and then you understand it all. When you're learning on your own with ChatGPT or using some kind of copilot, it's giving you all the answers. And so you have to have that mentality to be able to discern, actually, I'm only focused on this right now. I'm not going to worry about this. I know I don't understand it. So you're like charged with coming up with your own, in a way, like structure that helps you stay motivated and actually get through the learning. And I can do that because I think I've taken the traditional courses, but I feel like that would be harder for someone just starting out. They have to approach it a different way. And because it's this buffet of everything you want,
Hmm.
I think it forces people who are new to coding to be more intentional with how they walk into it. Do you have any advice to like people who are just getting into coding now, given all that?
Yeah, I think ultimately you have to have some project. You need like a North
Mm-hmm.
Star.
Yeah.
Then if you have that, then you're going to be asking the right questions about it. So whether you're asking the right questions to Google or to AI, right?
Yeah.
You have two sources of information, and then you are automatically going to be falling into the right spot and learning yourself, right? I mean, that's part of the thing. Like, I feel like you'll I feel like Stack Overflow, right? Like that's something that you land on often, and it's like 50-50, right? Like sometimes they're
Yeah.
good answers, sometimes they're terrible answers, right? So even if you go with a terrible answer, you'll soon learn that it was a terrible answer. I just think it's a part of the journey. I don't think that, I don't know, it's anything less or more.
So let's say
Hmm.
large language models get way better. So fewer hallucinations, better access to data. They run on smaller compute. And so you can increase access to them, increase consumption. And so that would actually mean more jobs, technically, like more technical jobs versus fewer. And that seems to
Mm-hmm.
be the case in like different economic case studies. So, do you guys feel like that is a potential that there will actually be new jobs as a result of this? And I personally feel that that's kind of likely because they're like we're just headed in that direction as humanity where we're all just working more. So I can't imagine there being less work.
I do think that there's going to be more offerings, right? I mean, you can already see it today, right? You've got, these prompt engineers, like that didn't exist a few years ago. I think it just depends, right? I mean, like once AI does get to that level where you can really just kind of like let it loose a little bit more. Like imagine if you could instead of hiring a COBOL engineer, right? You hire an AI engineer that can train the machine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Set up the
Mm-hmm.
guardrails, and then have the machine take care of the code. So they only work with the AI. They don't work directly with the code. So that, like, I feel like that is more valuable. Because then if there's another platform or another set of, like, tools that needs fixing or maintenance or something, then in theory, you could have that engineer have that project as well. So they can have, like, it's one person handling, like, the job of what today maybe takes, 3 people in one team, 3 people in the other thing. Like, you've got a bunch of things going on like that, right? So I do think that there is that, like, you have that superpower.
Tyler, anything to add?
Well, I think conceptually, like I was just saying, like maybe popular culture, there was an assumption that AI was going to be the problem solver, creative person or creative entity, and that's just not probably going to be the case, especially in like in computer programming world. Like that just doesn't seem like the inevitable case, and it seems more inevitable that they're going to be the whatever the opposite of that is, right, Marcelo?
Okay, I really like this question.
Yeah.
So I feel like originally people thought, oh, because of AI, now I can go from user story to app and cut out the middleman developer. And it seems like that is not at all the case. That it's, first of all, user doesn't even know that that's the right user story. Like they don't even know what they want. So you still have to have all the people in the middle thinking about products, including the developers. And then there's the orchestrating the entire system versus just like a part of the system that AI can be really good at. And then thinking long term and bringing all those human pieces into it.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. Like like I said, you need somebody or a group of people that's saying, okay, yeah, we're agreeing that this is the right path, right? You can have AI help you, but AI is not going to do that thinking for you. Like you have to do that. Maybe it will get you a kickstart, right? Oh, here are some ideas. Fine,
Yeah.
okay, but
Yeah.
but ultimately you need to break that apart, and the human mind needs to come in and do some work for sure.
Where do you see AI? Like, I think we're kind of all on the same page now. Where do you see AI thriving in your world? Like, you've been through the hurdles of the annoying AI, right? Where's like the next step in you as a coder and like you as like an architect? Where does AI live that's like not annoying anymore and is like an actual thing that you like? Maybe you enjoy it right now, but like you learn to really enjoy it or something.
I mean, I think it's because it's multifaceted, right? Like it's
Yeah.
because it's so capable at other things, and what I'm finding is that ultimately the superpower is in its non-deterministic thing, right? So right now, like coding is something that's very deterministic, right? You have a function, it does this, input, output, you're done, right? So it's very specific. Whereas I feel like AI is a little bit more of a mess, right? So, when you look at these models that are, these diffusion algorithms for making images or sounds, right? That's chaos. Like you want a lot of chaos there. You can basically have it do whatever you want, and it's going to be good, right? It's just going to make a mix. So I definitely feel a lot of power in those kinds of applications that are just very creative, and you just want that mess. That's on the tooling side, right? That's me using it. But I think that there's also other applications, even outside of, text-based responses and audio and images. We also have what we've been building at Optra with basically video, where you have this camera that's looking at a particular view or something, and it's trying to find something for you that is qualitative information, right? Maybe the number of people that are walking by, or how many people are happy in a group. Those kinds of things are a little bit more interesting because you're capturing a bunch of images, you're processing it through the AI. The AI is saying, okay, it looks like 50% of people are happy. It looks like 70% of people are happy, or everybody's clapping, or like that kind of information is information that you would need to put a human with like a tally or something, and they would have to be observing,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
all the time, right? And you don't want to do that. So for things like that, I think it's super valuable, super valuable, because you are replacing somebody, but you're replacing somebody that doesn't want to do that anyway. Like, let's do that, right? Let's get that information out and then get some insights, and then we can really start exploring what's next in a particular line of business, right? So I think that's where it's like very cool. Those kind of like applications that are a little bit more specific and more, just you need a little bit more of that like chaos, and just to see, oh yeah, I just want broad numbers. Let me know what's going on, right?
Okay, last topic I will bring up. And I'm just curious if, Marcel, you have any opinions about this. So researchers have shown that malware can be like introduced into a system through a model, through an AI model, through a machine learning model. And of course, this has been a concern in the world of security and data privacy for years, machine learning, even the traditional machine learning versus generative. And so I want to ask, what do you think are the new concerns, or will become the new concerns around data and privacy and security because of AI?
Yeah, so there's definitely a big like loophole there, right? It is a massive problem, especially because you're putting this sort of like you're putting this sort of logic in the hands of people that maybe are inexperienced, and this thing is literally reading your entire files and processing them. That's going over the wire, like all that stuff. That, like, it can be intercepted. There's a lot of things that can happen along the way, and so you as a junior, like maybe you're putting your passwords into your code because you're just working on something quickly. You don't really know about these security things. Well, those passwords and those kinds of things are making their way into the large language model and potentially being stored if the large language model isn't smart enough to remove that. So somebody else that's using your same model could just ask for your password, maybe, and
Ooh.
it could appear, right? Like, it could imagine the right password, the right secret. So there are very big problems with those kinds of things.
Well, along
Gotcha.
that
Yeah,
same
yeah,
vein,
sorry.
so like hacking, if I wanted to hack a system, could I program in some biases into a model, get that model somehow into an organization, and now there's like an unknown agent that exists in there, and that's a security threat? Does it go that far?
Yes. Yes, I do think it can go that far. Because, yeah, you can train a model to secretly add some code that's going to be extracting secrets or
Whoa.
whatever information that should not be extracted. So I think the main thing there really is the models that you're using, you need to vet, right? You need to make sure that they're following the right practices. So I definitely would say, just if you're coming into the AI world, just use the easy ones, Copilot, ChatGPT, Perplexity, these tools that are Claude AI, all those things, like those are okay, right? Just, make sure you read the terms and make sure that, private things are actually private, and be careful with what you share. um, I think where the big problems are is if you're a more advanced programmer and you're kind of like, oh yeah, well, I don't want to pay them. Like, I don't want to run it on the cloud. I'll just run it in my machine. So then you pull in, your own model from Hugging Face, and then you set it up and you start feeding it code. But this model is like an open source model that maybe somebody else trained. So if you don't trust, like, you have to make sure that you trust the owner of that model and what they're giving you, right? can't just be picking up anything. They're the same kinds of risks that you can run into even with open source packages, right? And
Right.
and
Yeah.
arguably open source packages are worse because the code is like the virus, Trojan, whatever it is already in there.
I also feel like, so there's that. There's the hidden in the model security risks. And then there's the fact that it's a whole new stack. It's a whole new infrastructure. There are new places where data is coming into this system. So there must be new opportunity or new opportunity for an attack, like new holes or whatever vulnerabilities because of the new system. Do you feel like as like the cybersecurity experts right now, like do they have a solid understanding of what all of that is, or is that something that's still being developed?
I would say that some do and some don't, right? Because it's, again, people are people. Some people are just gonna pass judgment because they don't understand it. But I think ultimately, to really make be able to make a good point, a security point about it, you have to really take a deep dive and see how these models are working and being built, so that you can really make a proper like alignment with your security strategy. I think some of these vulnerabilities, I mean, are well founded, right? Like I think a lot of the larger companies are definitely going to say, oh, okay, well, yes, I do want to use this, but the only way I'm going to use this is if I have like an enterprise deployment of it. And so they'll have like their own deployment of ChatGPT in their cloud. And so that makes it safe for them, right? Because they ultimately own the data.
I got a more casual question for you, Marcelo. Given what you know, what you do, your expertise, all that kind of stuff, I'm curious on family and friends, if they have come to you in the last year or two since AI has existed with like doomsday type concerns. Have you had to talk anybody off any cliffs? Do they ask you all sorts of questions? How annoying is it? What does the new world of AI look like in your day-to-day non-work life with like family and friends asking you all sorts of stuff?
It is kind of interesting. I haven't gotten any like doomsday type of conversations.
Yeah.
But what I do see, like I'm surrounded with a lot of creatives, I guess, just in my network, and I see a lot of sort of hesitation to use it, like not even giving it a chance.
Yeah.
Type of things. Even when I'll prove to them, right? Like it's like, dude,
Yeah.
like. Wait, just do this. Here you go. Like, there's your. Just start off from there. I just saved you half an hour of time. You're good. They'll kind of look at me and be like a little hateful or resentful or something. Like, what the hell? Like, it's a thing that's going to take time. It's a cultural thing, I think. Just people start learning about technology with time, and nobody has to be the first one there. I do know that I'm the kind of person that like something new comes out and I want to be the first one in line, right? Like I want to learn this thing.
Yep.
So I don't think it's a bad thing. It's just the way it goes. It'll take everyone else to an extra 3 or 4 years to catch up. Fine, they can be the slow one.
We're gonna end things off with one final question for all of you, which is, what excites you most about the future?
For me, near term, hopefully, I mean, I'm very excited to have more access to AI models just through my phone or like through some device or something that's on me. Like I want to be able to just say, hey, like do this thing, and then have it interpret the function that I want it to do. And then, I don't know, like more quickly, more effectively turn off the lights in my house or do whatever it needs to do, right? Like, I am looking forward to something like that. And I do think that that's going to be very short term, like within a year, if not less.
I would be excited if an AI was like, I'm going to do your dishes. I'd be very excited. But I almost feel like it's just creating more work because you're going faster, you're being better, you're being more competitive. So, yeah, I would be excited to see AI helping my life in the real world outside of work. That would be exciting. Do my dishes, do my laundry, something in the real world.
Or come up with some kind of plate that makes it so you never have to do dishes again.
Yeah. Can we make a no dishes plate? Wow.
Yeah.
Great idea. Great.
Use
Love
it in
Go
that.
beyond
stores.
that problem. Yeah. Or maybe it breaks, cleans itself, then it comes back together because it's like
Ooh.
self-generating organic material or something. I don't know.
A generative plate?
A generative plate.
$1 billion idea. Love that.
Yeah, I'll finish this off. I would love a future where we implement AI in like a public goods more rather than business wise. Like I don't think we've gone to the public side of anything.
Yes.
So that'd be cool. I know it's not cost effective yet, but maybe we'll have to bite that bullet.
We'll see everyone in the next episode.